Hello everyone. I hope you are fine and safe inside your home. As you know that this is a lecture series on the topic charge under the Code of Criminal Procedure, which is provided under section 211 to 224 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. In the last session, we discussed the definition of charge. We also discussed the overview of charge. We studied section 211 in detail, and specifically we focused on section 211 subsection 7 read with section 75 of Indian Penal Code. So in today's session, we are going to complete section 212, 213 and 214 in detail. So let's begin with section 212. Section 212 basically provides for the time and place and person. Section 212 is divided in two parts, subsection 1 and subsection 2. Subsection 1 is very simple. It's self-explanatory. It simply provides that the charge shall contain the particulars of time and place of the alleged offense, particular about the person against whom, if any, and particulars about the property, if any. It simply means that if the judge, while framing the charge, if he has the knowledge that what was the particulars of time or what was the particulars of the alleged offense or the place of the alleged offense, he will provide in the charge. So for example, if I say that A is charged to have committed the murder of B at 1 a.m. on 1st of January 2020 near India Gate, Delhi. So this is the example where I'm providing the particulars of time and place of the alleged offense. In the next thing, it says particulars of the person against whom. So as I said, A is charged to have committed the murder of B. So this is the offense which has been committed against B. So I'll mention about B also, against whom the offense has been committed. Third particulars is about the property. So sometimes it happens there are certain offenses where the crime is against the property. So for example, theft, extortion, robbery. So if there's a knowledge of the property, so for example, you know that 1 lakh rupees has been stolen, and if it is a charge of theft, then that will provide that A is charged to have committed offense of theft of rupees 1 lakh rupees. And if all these details are not available, it is not mandatory. If it is available, it is mandatory. Now, section 212 subsection 2 is the relevant part of it, because this is the point where the people gets confused. Before we go section 212 subsection 2, we need to understand section 218 in short. Section 218 provides that there should be separate charge for every distinct offense of which any person is accused, and every charge is to be tried separately. The general rule is that all the charges for all the distinct offense has to be framed separately. If I give you a very simple example of this, A has given 1 lakh rupees. Now we are analyzing only section 218, and after that we will go to 212 subsection 2. So for example, A has given 1 lakh rupees to B in trust to distribute rupees 25,000 to X on 1/1/2020, rupees 25,000 to Y on 1/7/2020, and rupees 50,000 to Z on 31/12/2020. It says B, rather than distributing the money, used the same for his own benefit. Thus, B is charged with section 406 IPC for criminal breach of trust. Now we need to see that how the charges are framed under section 218 first. Let's see this. This is how the charges are framed under section 218. Judge should frame the charge separately under section 218 CRPC on like this. So on section 406 IPC, first, that you are charged to have committed criminal breach of trust on the sum of rupees 25,000 on 1/1/2020 against it. Secondly, that you are charged to have committed the criminal breach of trust of the sum of rupees 25,000 on 1/7/2020 against B. And thirdly, that you are charged to have committed criminal breach of trust of the sum of rupees 50,000 on 31/12/2020 against A. If you can see this, the judge, while framing the charge, is giving each and every detail of the distinct offense. First offense was committed on 1/1/2020. Second offense was committed on 1/7/2020, and the third offense was committed on 31/12/2020. And if you also look at, judges giving the detail of each and every offense, the sum of each and every offense, 25,000, 25,000, and 50,000. This is how the charges are framed under section 218. When section 218 says that charges has to be framed separately, what is the meaning of framing separately? Separately means under different head. So all these are the different head. If you look at the second schedule, form number 32, column number 2, there you will find the charge under two or more than two heads. So when the charge is framed under two or more than two heads, it is called that charges are being framed separately. So when I say charge are being framed separately, it does not mean that judge first in one piece of paper has to frame one charge, then sign, then another charge, then sign. No, it's not like that. So charges has to be framed separately means framing of the charge under different head like this. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. So the first exception which is provided for section 218 is section 212 subsection 2. And there's a link now. So first exception to the general rule provided under section 218 is provided under section 212 subsection 2. So what is the meaning of now section 212 subsection 2? It provides that it admits of the trial of any number of acts of criminal breach of trust or dishonest misappropriation of property committed within a year as amounted to only one offense. So section 212 subsection 2 only says that you don't have to mention each and every criminal breach of trust offense. Each judge does not have to give all the details of every sum, all the dates when it was committed. So section 21 subsection 2 has given one leeway to the judge while framing the charge. So how a charge can be framed under section 212 subsection 2? Just have a look at this. Judge can simply frame the charge like in this way. You are charged to have committed criminal breach of trust of the gross value of rupees 1 lakh against A from 1/1/2020 to 31/12/2020. So under section 218, how we were framing the charge? We were framing the charge like this. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, we were giving the details of each and every offense. We were giving the exact sum of each and every offense. But here, when you frame charge under section 212 subsection 2, the first thing is it should be in relation to criminal breach of trust and dishonest misappropriation of property. The time should not exceed 1 year. And you can include any number of distinct offense of criminal breach of trust and dishonest misappropriation of property. One point to note is that judge did not give the dates and value of each and every offense committed within 1 year, but only the gross value of the property and starting and ending date. So the meaning of the time shall not exceed 1 year. Now, what is the meaning of this? Let's read this. Any number of acts of breach of trust committed within 1 year amounts to only one offense. If the time is exceeding 1 year, then judge has to either frame the separate charges for each offense or frame the charges year-wise. For example, charges of 2018, 2019 in one head and charges of 2019 to 2020 in second head, and they have to be tried separately. So moving to the next. Difference between section 212 subsection 2 and section 219. So you can read it from here. Section 219 limits the offenses to 3 offenses committed within 1 year. The first thing. So when judge is framing the charge, is putting anything under section 219, whether it is the offense of theft, whether it is the offense of robbery, dacoity, they should not exceed more than 3. If it is exceeding more than 3 under section 219, again, judge has to frame the separate charge for each and every offense. Right? The offenses, the charges cannot combine. It has to be in a different head then. But section 212 subsection 2, first thing, it is for unlimited offenses. It is not being limited to only 3 offenses. And second point, it is confining to the criminal breach of trust and dishonest misappropriation of property within 1 year. Right? Now, meaning of it shall not be sufficient to specify the gross sum. I have seen many people teaching this, that they use the word that when judges framing the charge for criminal breach of trust or dishonest misappropriation of property, judge has to use section 212 subsection 2. He has to provide the gross value. He has to combine the charge. No. The simple meaning of this is that section 212 subsection 2 is merely discretionary in nature. It is merely an enabling provision. It does not bind the judge to frame the charge under section 212 subsection 2. Judge always has an option to frame the charge under section 218, right? That is the binding provision. Apart from 218, every other provision which is provided as an exception, section 218 subsection 2, section 219, 220, 221, all are the enabling provision. So when someone says that it is binding in nature, no, it is not. And that is the logic that framers, when they were framing this particular provision, they have used the word it shall be sufficient to specify the gross sum. It simply means that judge, when judge is framing the charge under section 212 subsection 2, he does not have to provide the details of the sum of each and every offense. He can just provide the gross sum. So just remember this, that this is not our obligatory provision. This is not a mandatory provision. It is merely an enabling provision. Moving on to the next. Let's begin with section 213. Section 213 provides the manner of committing offense must be stated. So when the contents which are provided in section 211 and 212 are not sufficient to give him the proper notice of the charges for what he is being tried, section 213 comes into picture. I'll give you a very simple example that when the manner is required. So for example, there is a matrimonial proceeding which is going on in the court. Okay. The wife has filed some domestic violence complaint against the husband. Now the rule is, as per the latest judgment of the Supreme Court, that the income affidavit has to be filed by both the parties, by the wife also and by the husband also, or whoever the parties are there in that particular case. So for example, if the husband has filed the income affidavit, you know that income affidavit is consisting of 30 to 40 pages. It's quite big. And there are many columns in this. And in that particular income affidavit, husband provides the wrong detail of his salary. He suppressed the fact of his salary. Suppose if his salary is 1 lakh rupees, but he says that his salary is only 50,000 rupees. So he has suppressed the fact of his salary. The judge comes to know about it, that he is lying. Now, when court has taken the cognizance of this particular offense under section 193, that the husband is providing the false affidavit, in that time, how the charges will be framed. The question is whether accused is able to know the real offense for what he's being tried. No, because there are many columns in the income affidavit. He does not know that what to defend, that in what part of the affidavit. He provided the wrong information. He provided the false information. So in that case, the judge has to provide him the details of that particular income affidavit where he submitted the false income affidavit. Judge has to tell him that, see, this is the point. The salary part, you have suppressed this particular fact. So in the charge, this has to be mentioned. The manner has to be mentioned. So the simple meaning of manner is detail how he committed that particular offense. So there are some offenses where the manner is required. There are some offenses where the manner is not required. We will see that. So for example, theft. In theft, if Mr. A is accused of theft of some article at certain time and place, there is no manner required. Judge is not going to mention in the charge that how he has committed theft. First, he broke the lock, then how he entered inside the home. Manner is not required. In the similar way, if I say cheating, in cheating, the manner is required. So for example, this, A cheated by personation, exhibiting the board as in hospital and maternity home in building number TP 415, and by deception, making others believe that A was a qualified registered medical practitioner, competent to treat with allopathic medicines, and dishonestly cheated the patients. Therefore, A committed cheating by personation. Here, if judge is framing the charge, then he will state the manner of committing cheating as mentioned above. If the manner is not provided, it simply means that the accused will not be considered to have the sufficient notice of the charge. Now, the false affidavit. In the beginning of section 213, I gave you the example of some matrimonial proceeding. So in false evidence, the charge will include the manner, the portion of the evidence to be stated. Otherwise, it will not give accused sufficient notice. Now, the illustration D provides that obstructing public servant. Obstructing public servant is provided in section 186. So manner is required at how A obstructed B. So for example, if the police is discharging its function in the public area, if you're obstructing the police in discharging its function, and if police has taken action against you under section 186, in that time, when the charge will be framed, the manner that how you obstructed the police will be stated in the charge. So manner will be required. In murder, no manner is required. That suppose the charge is A is charged to have committed the murder of B at this date on this time. Manner is not required, that how many times there were stabbings or bullet shots. All these things are not required in the charge. A public servant is accused of disobeying the law with intent to save B from punishment, section 217 IPC. So again, in this is the last illustration of section 213, which says that charge must be set out the disobedience charge and law infringed. And again, in this time, the no detailed manner is required. So this is all about section 213. Now we will go to section 214. Section 214, before I move to this, I would like to tell you that this is the provision where you will not find much in the commentary. Even if you take the volumes of commentary on the CRPC, you will not find much material on section 214. There are hardly any judgments for section 214. And when teachers teaches you in the college or even for the competitive law examination, they just teach you section 211, 212, 213, and they directly come to 215 and they just read 214 and then move to 215. But in today's session, we will look into it in detail because this provision is very relevant for the exam purpose. So it says, and I quote, that in every charge, words used in describing an offense shall be deemed to have been used in the sense attached to them, respectively by the law under which such offense is punishable. The first expression which we need to focus is the meaning of words used in describing an offense. So when we were studying section 211 in the first part, we studied that there are two types of words which are used in describing an offense. First, where the offense is given the name, then the words used in describing the offense is the name of the offense, which is provided in section 211 subsection 2. So for example, theft, criminal breach of trust, cheating, murder, hurt, assault, causing miscarriage, forgery. For all these, the words, the name is provided. So when the name is provided, the words used describing the offenses, the name of those offenses. In second part, where the offense is not given the name, then the words used in describing the offense is the relevant part of that particular section, the ingredients of that particular offense. So for example, in section 184, I have provided here, for example, under section 184, the relevant words used in describing the offenses are intentionally obstructing sale of any property and sold by any public authority. So next word which is used under section 214, we will look into the examples after that. The next word which is used under this is meaning of deemed. What is the meaning of deemed? It's called the deeming provision. Deeming provision means it will be considered as. So for example, if I say that A will be deemed as B, it means A is not B, but for the legal fiction, for the particular purpose of that particular offense, A will be considered as B. Next is sense attached to them respectively by the law under which such offense is committed. So for example, now assault, there are three statutes. Assault is provided under section 352 of Indian Penal Code. Sexual assault, the word is also provided under section 7 of the POCSO, and the assault is also provided under section 23 of the Juvenile Justice Act. Let's take a very simple example. Suppose if there is a sexual assault with a person who is under 18 years of age, but in later stage it was found out that he was not less than 18 years, but when he lost the complaint, he was more than, when the offense was committed, he was more than 18 years of age, or he was 20 years of age or 19 years of age. So the charges were framed, for example, when he lost the complaint, the charges were framed under section 7 of the POCSO Act for sexual assault. And if in the later stage it was found that his age is more than 18, then judge will come to the conclusion that it was not a sexual assault. The question is whether the person can be punished for simple assault. No. Once accused is charged for assault under IPC, it has to be taken under that sense only, under Indian Penal Code only. Another example, if I give you, the sense of the word murder under section 300 IPC is attached to section 302 IPC. Once a person is acquitted under charges of murder, then he can't be punished for voluntarily causing hurt under section 321, read with section 31 IPC, without framing charge under section 321, despite of the evidence of hurt present there, because the word murder under section 302 IPC cannot be taken in the same sense as voluntarily causing hurt, which is given under section 319 and 321 of the Indian Penal Code. Okay. Another example of this. A exposes her child with the knowledge that she is thereby likely to cause its death. The child dies in consequence of such exposure. A was charged with section 304. She was acquitted under section 304. Now she cannot be punished under section 317 in absence of the specific charge of section 317. Why? Because the words used in section 304 has been used in the sense of culpable homicide only. So if the charges has not been framed under section 317, he cannot be punished for that. And this is one judgment under section 214, Radha Sashidharan versus State of Kerala, decided by the Kerala High Court in 2006. Now, in this case, what happened that there was a person who goes to the hospital and he pretends himself to be a doctor. So when he was a doctor, he used to inject people. There were certain drugs where he did not take the proper precautions before giving, but they were not the unwholesome drug. They were not completely illegal drug. They were legal drug, but he did not take the precaution. So when he injected the person some legal drug, some wholesome drug, without taking the precaution, the person dies. So the charges were framed against him under different heads under section 420 of the Indian Penal Code, and the charges are also framed under section 304 of Indian Penal Code. Now we are only concerned with the charges of section 304. So the charges under section 304 framed against the appellant with a definite allegation of culpable homicide not amounting to murder by reason of administration of drug without taking precaution for reaction therefrom. This is totally different from causing hurt by means of administration of unwholesome drug. So in this case, what happens that the person was acquitted actually under section 304 of the Indian Penal Code. Then prosecution in that case argued before the court that okay, it's fine that he is not being punished under section 304, then he should be punished under section 338 of the Indian Penal Code. Court says no, he cannot be punished under section 338 because the culpable homicide not amounting to murder by reason of administration of drug is completely used in a different sense from what? From causing hurt by means of administration of unwholesome drug. So the words, the offenses which has been used in the charge in describing the offense has been used in completely different sense. So this is all about section 214 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. I hope you have understood these relevant provisions which are provided in the section 212 to 214 for not only for the preliminary exam, but also for the mains exam. If you get any doubt, do let me know. Do write your comment in the comment box. And if you want to have these slides or notes, you give your email ID in the comment box and I'll share the notes with you all. Thank you so much.